What happens when one of music's most fearless artists meets a talk show host who thinks he can push any boundary for a laugh? You won't believe what unfolds when Miley Cyrus sits down with Jimmy Kimmel and refuses to be the punchline. This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a complete meltdown that exposed the dark side of late-night television and left an entire studio audience in stunned silence. The confrontation that erupted last night will have you questioning everything you think you know about Hollywood's power dynamics. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when two massive egos collide on live television. The energy in the Jimmy Kimmel live studio was electric as the familiar opening music began to fade. Jimmy Kimmel, wearing his signature smirk, adjusted his tie and looked directly into the camera with that calculated confidence that has made him a late-night staple for years. But tonight, something felt different. There was an underlying tension that even the most seasoned audience members could sense. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredibly talented Miley Cyrus," Kimmel announced with exaggerated enthusiasm, his voice booming through the studio speakers. Miley emerged from backstage wearing a striking black leather jacket over a vintage band t-shirt, her platinum blonde hair catching the studio lights perfectly. She waved to the audience with genuine warmth, her infectious smile lighting up the room as she made her way across the stage. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, clearly excited to see the pop superstar who had recently made headlines with her latest album and outspoken advocacy work. As she settled into the guest chair, Kimmel leaned back with that trademark grin that his fans love but his critics find insufferable. "Miley, great to have you back on the show. You look fantastic." "Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always a pleasure," Miley replied, though there was something in her tone that suggested she was already on guard. The interview began innocuously enough, with Kimmel asking about her new music and recent projects. Miley spoke passionately about her artistic evolution and her commitment to various social causes, her eyes lighting up as she discussed the themes in her latest work. But anyone paying close attention could see Kimmel's body language shifting, his questions becoming more pointed, more personal. "So Miley, we have to talk about your past," Kimmel said, leaning forward with that predatory gleam in his eyes that seasoned celebrities learn to recognize. "You've certainly had your wild phase, haven't you? The whole wrecking ball era, the tongue thing, all that controversy." Miley's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Jimmy, I think we've all moved past that. I'm here to talk about my current work and what I'm passionate about now." But Kimmel wasn't deterred. In fact, her deflection seemed to embolden him. "Come on, don't be shy about it. You made millions off being outrageous. Surely you can laugh about it now." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What had started as typical late-night banter was beginning to feel like something else entirely. Miley maintained her composure, but the tension in the room was becoming palpable. "I think there's a difference between artistic expression and being outrageous for shock value, Jimmy. My music has always been authentic to who I am at that moment in my life." Kimmel chuckled, but it wasn't a warm sound. "Right, authentic. Is that what we're calling it?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone in the studio could sense that this interview was about to take a very different turn. Miley's jaw tightened, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. "Excuse me?" Her voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. The audience held its collective breath. "Look, I'm just saying," Kimmel continued, his tone becoming more condescending with each word, "you built your entire career on shock value and controversy. The twerking, the provocative outfits, dating older men when you were barely legal. Let's call a spade here." The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras. Even Kimmel's usual supporters in the audience seemed uncomfortable with where this was heading. Miley sat perfectly still for a moment, processing what had just been said to her on national television. "Jimmy, I need you to stop right there," Miley said, her voice steady but unmistakably firm. "You're crossing a line that no professional interviewer should cross." But Kimmel was on a roll now, feeding off what he perceived as weakness. "Oh, come on, don't play the victim card. You put yourself out there. You made those choices. You can't rewrite history now that you want to be taken seriously as an artist." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Miley leaned forward, her eyes never leaving Kimmel's face. "Let me get this straight. You invited me on your show to promote my new album, and instead you're sitting here slut-shaming me and reducing my entire artistic journey to cheap tabloid fodder?" "I'm not slut-shaming anyone," Kimmel replied with a dismissive wave, clearly not grasping the gravity of the situation. "I'm just pointing out the obvious evolution of your image. From Disney princess to wild child to whatever this reinvention is supposed to be." The audience was now visibly uncomfortable, with several people shifting in their seats and whispering to each other. Some were even looking toward the exits. This wasn't the light-hearted entertainment they had signed up for. "Whatever this reinvention is supposed to be?" Miley repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Jimmy, do you hear yourself right now? You're sitting there dismissing my growth as a human being and an artist like it's some kind of marketing gimmick." Kimmel seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "I'm just asking the questions that everyone at home is thinking. Your fans deserve honesty, don't they?" "My fans deserve better than this," Miley shot back, her composure finally beginning to crack. "And frankly, so do I. I came here in good faith to talk about my music, my advocacy work, my growth as a person, and you're treating me like I'm some kind of circus act." The camera operators were having a field day, zooming in on both participants, as the tension reached a breaking point. Kimmel's producers could be seen frantically gesturing from the wings, clearly trying to signal for a commercial break, but Kimmel either didn't see them or chose to ignore them. "Look, Miley, I think, you're being a little too sensitive here," Kimmel said, his tone now patronizing in a way that made even his most loyal fans cringe. "This is late-night television. We joke around. We have fun. We don't take everything so seriously." That was the moment when everyone in the studio knew there was no coming back from this. Miley's eyes flashed with something that was equal parts hurt and fury, and the audience could sense that whatever happened next was going to be explosive. "Too sensitive?" Miley's voice cut through the studio like a blade. She stood up from her chair, towering over Kimmel, who suddenly looked much smaller behind his desk. "Jimmy, let me tell you what's sensitive. What's sensitive is a grown man, in his 50s, using his platform to humiliate a woman who trusted him enough to come on his show." The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row had their phones out, recording what was clearly becoming television history. Kimmel's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of what was unfolding before a live studio audience and millions of viewers at home. "Now hold on just a minute," Kimmel stammered, trying to regain control of his own show. "I think we're having a miscommunication here. Maybe we should take a break and—" "No, Jimmy, we're not taking a break." Miley's voice was steel-wrapped, in velvet. "You started this conversation and we're going to finish it. You want to talk about my past? Let's talk about yours. Let's talk about the countless women who have sat in this very chair while you made inappropriate comments about their bodies, their relationships, their personal lives." The color drained completely from Kimmel's face. His usual quick wit seemed to have abandoned him entirely. I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying anything, Jimmy. I'm stating facts." Miley began pacing behind her chair, her energy filling the entire studio. "I'm talking about the pattern of behavior that everyone in this industry knows about but nobody wants to address because you're Jimmy Kimmel and this is your show." The studio audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. The producers in the wings were in full panic mode, frantically trying to figure out how, to handle a situation that was spiraling completely out of their control. You think because you hide behind humor and that boyish grin, you can say whatever you want to women and get away with it? Miley continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. You think because this is entertainment, that gives you a free pass to tear down women who have worked their entire lives to be taken seriously? Kimmel was visibly sweating now, his carefully crafted on-screen persona crumbling in real time. Miley, I think you're blowing this way out of proportion. We were just having a conversation about your career trajectory. My career trajectory? Miley laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jimmy, you weren't asking about my career. You were slut-shaming me on national television. You were reducing a woman's entire artistic journey to a series of tabloid headlines and moral judgments. The audience began to murmur among themselves, some nodding in agreement with Miley's words. It was becoming clear that public opinion in the room was shifting dramatically against the host. And you know what the worst part is? Miley turned to face Kimmel directly, her eyes blazing. The worst part is that you're so convinced of your own righteousness that you can't even see what you're doing. You're so used to getting away with this behavior that you actually thought, I would just sit here and take it with a smile. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Look, if I said something that offended you, that wasn't my intention. Stop. Miley held up her hand, and the finality in her voice silenced him immediately. Just stop talking, Jimmy. Your intention doesn't matter when your impact is this destructive, and the fact that you still can't take responsibility for what you've done here tonight tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you really are. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point, and everyone could sense that Miley was about to make a move that would change everything. Without warning, Miley reached for the small clip-on microphone attached to her jacket and yanked it off with such force that the wire snapped. The sharp sound echoed through the silent studio like a gunshot. She held the broken microphone up for everyone to see, including the cameras that were still rolling. "This is what I think of your platform, Jimmy," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the studio even without amplification. "And this is what I think of hosts who abuse their power." She dropped the microphone onto Kimmel's desk with a loud clatter that made him flinch visibly. The audience was completely transfixed. Several people had their hands over their mouths in shock, while others were frantically texting and posting on social media. The energy in the room was electric, like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. Kimmel tried one final desperate attempt to regain control. "Security! Can we get security in here?" he called out, his voice cracking slightly. But his own security team seemed frozen, unsure of how to handle a situation where the guest wasn't being threatening, just devastatingly articulate. "Security?" Miley turned to the audience with a look of complete disbelief. "Did everyone hear that? Jimmy Kimmel just called security on a woman for standing up for herself on his own show." She gestured toward the cameras. "I hope everyone at home is watching this, because this is exactly how men like Jimmy handle women who refuse to be silenced." The audience began to rumble with disapproval, and not toward Miley. Several people started clapping slowly. Then more joined in until there was a sustained applause that clearly supported the pop star over their host. Kimmel's face went from pale to red as he realized his own audience was turning against him. "You want to know what authentic looks like, Jimmy?" Miley's voice cut through the applause. "Authentic is having the courage to evolve. Authentic is owning your mistakes and growing from them. Authentic is treating people with respect regardless of their past." She moved closer to his desk, her presence commanding the entire space. "But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Because authenticity requires introspection, and introspection requires admitting that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't with the women who sit in that chair. Maybe the problem is with the man behind this desk." Kimmel was now visibly shaking, his hands gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles were white. This is my show. You can't just..." Your show? Miley's laugh was sharp and bitter. Jimmy, this stopped being your show the moment you decided to attack a guest instead of interviewing them. This became a public reckoning, and frankly, it's long overdue. The producers were now frantically signaling for commercial break, but the cameras kept rolling. Everyone knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come, and no one wanted to miss a second of it. I want everyone in this audience and everyone watching at home to understand something, Miley said, turning to address the cameras directly. This isn't about me. This isn't about one bad interview. This is about a culture that allows men like Jimmy Kimmel to belittle women and call it entertainment. She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering what everyone could sense would be her final blow. And that culture ends tonight. Her voice was quiet now, but it carried more power than all her previous shouting combined. Because I'm done being polite. I'm done pretending this is okay. And I'm done letting men like you hide behind humor, while you tear down women who are braver and more talented than you'll ever be. The studio was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Even Kimmel seemed to realize that whatever came next would seal his fate forever. Miley took a deep breath, her composure returning as she prepared to deliver her final statement. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and absolutely devastating in its clarity. Jimmy, I want you to remember this moment, she said, looking directly into his eyes. I want you to remember the night that a woman stood up to you on your own show and exposed you for exactly what you are. Not a comedian, not an entertainer, just a bully with a platform who finally met someone who wouldn't be bullied. She turned to face the audience, who were hanging on her every word. And to everyone here tonight and everyone watching at home, I want you to remember that you have the power to demand better. You don't have to accept disrespect disguised as entertainment. You don't have to laugh when someone's pain becomes someone else's punchline. The audience erupted in sustained applause, many people rising to their feet in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Several audience members were shouting, "Yes!" and "Thank you," while others were wiping away tears. The support was overwhelming and genuine. Kimmel sat frozen behind his desk, his carefully constructed career crumbling in real time. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. The man who had made a living off his quick wit was completely speechless. As for you, Jimmy, Miley said, turning back to face the host one final time, I hope this teaches you something about respect. I hope this teaches you about consequences. And I hope you think twice before you ever treat another woman the way you've treated me tonight. She walked back to her chair, picked up her purse with deliberate slowness, and slung it over her shoulder. The entire studio watched in fascination as she moved with the grace of someone who had just won the most important battle of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to the audience, thank you for witnessing the truth tonight. It's been real, but I'm done here. She began walking toward the exit, her heels clicking against the studio floor in the profound silence. But then she stopped, turned around one last time, and delivered the final blow that would be replayed on social media for weeks to come. Oh, and Jimmy? Next time you want to interview Miley Cyrus, make sure you're worthy of the conversation. Her smile was razor-sharp. Because after tonight, I don't think you are. With that, she walked off the stage to thunderous applause from an audience that was now completely on her feet. The cameras followed her exit, capturing every moment, as she disappeared backstage, leaving behind a host who looked like he had just been hit by a freight train. Kimmel sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity, the weight of what had just happened settling over the entire studio. His producers were frantically trying to signal him to say something, anything, to salvage the situation, but he seemed incapable of forming words. Finally, one of the producers shouted, "Cut!" and the cameras stopped rolling, but the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were spreading like wildfire across every social media platform imaginable. The hashtag #MileyCimmel was trending worldwide before the show had even finished taping. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Kimmel's ratings plummeted as advertisers pulled their support and celebrities began canceling their scheduled appearances. The confrontation had indeed highlighted the importance of respect and professionalism in the entertainment industry, exactly as Miley had intended. But perhaps most importantly, it had shown that even the most powerful figures in Hollywood weren't untouchable when faced with someone brave enough to speak truth to power. The night Miley Cyrus walked off Jimmy Kimmel's show became the night the entertainment industry was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about itself. And for Miley, it became the night she proved that sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is refuse to be anything other than exactly who you are.